We're ready for the start. They're off.
Welcome in, everybody. It's Express Bet First Call presented by First Bet. Who's ready for a derby? We got Oaks even before that. Jeff Siegel, Jeremy Plunk. Jeff, we put a lot of work into this. It seems like you and I see you more than my wife this week. But this is a lot of fun. We've got a lot of races to handicap, as we always do here on the First Call podcast. We take 8 races over the course of a weekend. Typically, they're all piled up on a Saturday, and we probably could have took 12 on Saturday this week. But we've got Oaks Day, too, so there's a lot of fun Friday stuff to get to.
This looks kind of like a Breeders' Cup weekend, really, when you think about the races we're running and the horses that are in them. And I'm looking at the lineup not only for Oaks Day, but for Derby Day as well. And I'm seeing quite a few horses in here that, if they stay healthy, should be major players in the fall. So this is an exciting weekend for sure. I'm not sure about the gambling aspect, at least on some of these stakes races, looking like we're going to have some short prices. But, hey, the sport thrives, and we're going to be enjoying these races. And who knows, maybe we'll come up with a middle price horse or two to gamble on. But looking forward not only to Oaks Day, but, of course, the big day on Saturday as well.
And if you're betting the multi-race wagers, you really only need to beat one of those big favorites sometimes to make the sequence pay. So even if you're staring at superstar after superstar after superstar, knock one of them off, and all of a sudden that, skinny pick 4 looks pretty good as everybody's leaning on singles. So we will talk about the wagering opportunities that are ahead this weekend. We'll also mention that the Preakness Future Wager remains open. More than $200,000 in the pool for that. Unbelievable the way the folks are sending it in for the Preakness Future Wager. So that pool remains open through Saturday at 6 o'clock. Of course, we got live racing across the first family of racetracks: Santa Anita, Golden Gate, Maryland Jockey Club, and Gulfstream Park also this weekend. So a ton going on in horse racing. And Jeff, they got a huge pick 6 carryover that's I think 480,000, something like that, at Turf Paradise. It's got to go on Saturday in a mandatory payoff. So Turf Paradise finally has a chance to shine, and they're going to run a mandatory payoff right up against the Kentucky Derby. But if you're a gambler, these are the kind of things you want to know. So I know our listeners out there and our players want to know about stuff like that. So in between all these superstar races, get yourself an Arizona bred non-winners of 2 handicapping test in there as well out at Turf Paradise. A lot of fun. Let's take a look at the schedule of stakes races that we're going to look at here on the First Call podcast. We've got 4 Friday, 4 Saturday. Again, more stakes in this. 10:30 a.m. post time at Churchill. Early start both days. We'll look at the Ali Sheba Stakes for the older horses, the 8 Bells for the Sprint Fillies, the La Troyenne for the Distaffers, and Kentucky Oaks 149 for the 3-year-old fillies. Headline race on Friday at Churchill. To Saturday we go. 14 race card. The Derby goes as race 12. The first goes at 10:30 a.m. The last goes at 8:30 p.m. Jeff, 10 hours of horse racing for you at Churchill Downs on Saturday. That's 2 5-hour energies for those of you scoring at home if you're trying to stay awake during the course of a 10-hour handicapping exercise. We'll start with the Derby City Distaff. We'll look at the Churchill Downs handicap for the sprinters, the Turf Classic, which is our express bet race of the week. That is the turf race immediately preceding the Derby. And then we'll also talk about Kentucky Derby 149. And special note, when we get a little later in our podcast, we had a report filed on track at Churchill Downs from the Tim Yakteen barn. Millie Ball, not just a crack reporter, she's also the wife of trainer Tim Yakteen. She's going to give us a live report taped this morning from Churchill Downs on Thursday as we record our podcast. So you're going to get the latest news from Millie coming out of Churchill and a chance to see some of the horses that were out there on the track this morning. So we will have that for you later on in the podcast as well. So Jeff, let's get started with the handicapping. Let's go to the Ali Sheba. It's race number 5 at Churchill Downs on the Kentucky Oaks Day program. Among the headliners in this race is last year's Derby winner. We haven't seen Rich Strike in a while, but the last time we saw him at Churchill Downs this time of year, he made some history.
Center is coming up on the outside. Epicenter has taken the lead as they arrive into the final furlong. Sandon is coming after him. Epicenter and Sandon, these two, stride for stride. Simplification down the outside is next. They're coming down to the wire. Epicenter, Sandon. Rich Strike is coming up on the inside. Oh my goodness! The longest shot has won the Kentucky Derby. Rich Strike has done it in a stunning, unbelievable upset.
That was historic. Second largest payoff in the history of the Kentucky Derby. Donna Rail is still pumping his fist as he's still got the record for the longest Derby upset. But Rich Strike, Jeff, back at Churchill Downs. He's in the Aliceba Stakes, of course, the race named for the famed 1987 Derby and Preakness winner. Your thoughts on Rich Strike back at Churchill and how to handicap this Aliceba Stakes?
Well, I actually thought that was a legitimate run by Rich Strike, and I thought he would build on that and become and justify the race and verify the strength. But he hasn't won since, so maybe that was a one-hit wonder in the highest magnitude there, because his only other win other than the Derby was a win in a maiden $30,000 claiming race. So he won when it mattered, but I'm not expecting a whole lot from him in this race, because while he did run some good, decent races last year, he didn't win. And we have not seen him since November. I haven't seen any workouts video-wise, so I don't know where he's at. And I'm just not sure, as he tries to face tough older horses, whether he's going to be able to repeat that incredible run in the Derby. Yeah. It's a good race. This is a Breeders' Cup Classic type of race. It is a grade 2, but you've got Art Collector in here who won the Pegasus World Cup Classic and looked great doing it. And then you've got a vastly improved 6-year-old son of Bernardini. And it's funny because Bernardini has got both of these horses. He's sire of Art Collector now, and also West Will Power, who has really, really gotten good. He's 6 years of age, but he's only run 15 times. And he's got 4 consecutive triple-digit Beyer numbers, a career top in his most recent win in the New Orleans. And he showed in that race that he doesn't need the lead to win. He sat second and then kicked on and won for fun. And he's dropping 4 pounds off that race. So usually in the old days when you had handicaps, they'd pile it on, but he's actually dropping weight. And first time under Pratt, he ran the best race of his life. I don't really see any reason why West Will Power won't win again, unless you can talk me off of him and pump up somebody else.
Yeah, look, he's going to be the controlling speed probably in here. He and Art Collector, right? And he beat Art Collector on the dime in his previous start in the New Orleans Classic by Ford. So it kind of sets up the same way. I'm a big fan of Smile Happy. I think a mile and a 16th is his best distance probably right here. But this is a stiff test. I don't know if he's good as these horses. These older horses, Art Collector, West Will Power, are really good in this race. Last Samurai's an Oaklawn handicap winner coming off a good race last time when trying to defend his title, beaten just ahead by proxy in the Oaklawn handicap. So you get down past 3-4 of the top horses in this race, and you're probably looking at 3 of the top 6-7 handicap division horses in the country right now. So this is a fantastic edition of the Aliceba. It's worth $600,000. It's worth grade 1 status, not grade 2, as you mentioned before. Again, big fan of Smile Happy. I think he's going to run a good race, but these are some tough hombres, and frankly, I don't think he can beat them. It comes down to Art Collector, West Will Power probably. And, Rich Strike, he's going to have to show it to us. He was supposed to run a couple times already this year. They delayed. Now you show up on Derby Day or Derby weekend on the Oaks undercard. It almost looks like you're there for posterity's sakes, that it's not necessarily the best comeback spot for the horse, that you're just wanting to run amongst the big crowd in the celebration and honor a Derby winner, which is great for the public. I have no problem with that at all. But for the competitiveness of wagering on the race, I don't think this is a spot for Rich Strike first time back off the layoff. We'll see, though. Maybe he just loves Churchill Downs. He rolled in that maiden claimer. He ran so big in the Kentucky Derby. We'll see if that's the case. Next up on our handicapping slate, beyond the Aliceba Stakes on the Friday card, is the 8 Bells. 8 Bells, named for the runner-up in the 2008 Kentucky Derby, the ill-fated runner-up performance there, where she passed after the race. 8 Bells commemorated with this grade 2 stakes race for the 3-year-old fillies, as it should be. And these are top sprinters, Jeff. And one of the fillies we've seen, we debuted this filly in our Stars of Tomorrow in our It's Official podcast that we do every Tuesday. We have a Stars of Tomorrow. We debuted it last year, the week after her debut. And Money's Gold was our first star of tomorrow. And come up tomorrow, you're going to see why she's a star. Here's her last race at Tampa.
Trying to get winding up on the far outside. Awesome Pick is putting in a rally. They have just over a furlong left to go. Money's Gold cuts the corner and starts to open up. Money's Gold in front by 5 now to Dream Concert. Dreaming of Snow. Awesome Pick's running a good one, but a final 16th to go. Money's Gold is going to win by double digits here. Money's Gold, 3 for 3, and she is fast. Won it by, let's call it 17 lengths.
17 lengths, give or take. I mean, she was so far in front that day. Jason Beam on the mic, and not a bad estimation, Beamer. 17 and a quarter, the official. When you
blew that
see it live, yeah. At least in Price's Right terms, he was under the total, so he'll still get credit for the victory. Great call, great filly. This daughter of Munnings, Jeff, could be anything going short. She's staying short here at 7-8. So anybody getting her away here?
No, I mean, she's outside. She can do whatever she wants. She can go to the front. She's not speed crazy. She earned a Breeders' Cup type of number when she won her last start. In fact, she did the same when she broke her maiden. She has a little Rachel in her, I think. I mean, it's possible because she's a 3-year-old filly. She's only run 3 times. She's won her 3 races by almost 38 lengths total. She's run fast. She's done it easily. And with Medaglia d'Oro on the bottom side of her pedigree, of course, the sire of Rachel, there's no reason why she won't run long if given the chance. I'm not saying she's going to have to go 1.25 miles or anything like that, but 2 turns should be well within her range because she's just as good with her mind as she is with her legs. She's 6 to 5 in the morning line. She's going to be 2 to 5, maybe even lower than that. No gamble here, but if you really want to see a special filly, and I know we've had a lot of good fillies since Rachel, and they've done some great things, but I don't think any of the fillies I've seen since Rachel have started their career like this, and done so in such a dominating fashion that I can't wait to watch her run, and then we'll see what happens from there. But Money's Gold is, like they say, worth the price of admission, even if you can't gamble on her. And I don't really know who's going to pick up the pieces and be second. There might be a few in here that are going to be ridden just to be second, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
don't try to win. I want you to run second, so just ignore the favorite. Let her win by 20, and we'll see if we can pick up second money. And that's going to be interesting in its own way. But Money's Gold is incredible, and I can't wait to watch her.
She's got that resume and style, kind of like Kofefi, who was just a really dominant 3-year-old filly sprinter. I think she's got more upside than Kofefi even, and that tells you something because she ended up being a champion 3-year-old filly and champion sprinter in her big sophomore season. Now, the interesting thing about the 8 bells beyond the superstar at the top is these underlying horses, 3 of them that face Wet Paint, who's going to be the favorite in the Kentucky Oaks, are shortening distance because they're getting the heck away from Wet Paint. Now, they may not have qualified for the Kentucky Oaks with an overflow field anyway, but Condensation, Olivia Twist, and Grand Love all coming out of this race. They could give us a little barometer on Wet Paint. I mean, you certainly don't want to see these 3 horses trailing the field in the 8 bells. They're not going to beat probably Money's Gold, I don't think, but let's say these 3 horses from the fantasy can take a second, a fourth, and a fifth or something like that. I think that would endorse the form from Oaklawn as we see Wet Paint run a little bit later in the card. We certainly don't want to see those 3 get trashed in this race and then feel as good about the wins from Wet Paint, but I like Wet Paint a lot, and we'll talk Kentucky Oaks in another race or 2 here on the program. But before we get to that edition of the Kentucky Oaks, we've got a Kentucky Oaks winner coming back on the card Friday at Churchill Downs, Jeff, in the La Troyenne Stakes. Last year, it was turn back time for Dwayne Lucas in the Kentucky Oaks when he won it with Secret Oath. She's back on Friday. Remember this one from Friday a year ago.
The stretch, and it's Echo Zulu off the turn in front. Secret Oath on the outside second. Nest is third in the center of the track. Then comes Desert Dawn. It is Secret Oath and Luis Saez. They have the lead at the 8th pole. Echo Zulu not going with her. Nest is making her run. Desert Dawn is on the outside. But as they come to the wire, it is Secret Oath for the coach, Dwayne Lucas. She wins the Kentucky Oaks. Nest was second, and then it was Desert Dawn third. Echo Zulu finished fourth at 149.44. Dwayne does it.
Does he have another bullet in that 10-gallon hat for the La Troyenne Stakes, Jeff Siegel? We're big fans of the Philly Secret Oath. She's got to time the move. It's all up to Tyler Gaffleone, isn't it? We've talked about this like 10 times in the last 12 months.
Well, I think he learned his lesson last time. I think Wayne alluded to that. He'd have a little chat with his jockey this time, and you don't sit off the pace, open up a length and a half, and then get nailed. Usually when that happens, you've moved too soon. The good news for a Secret Oath is that there appears to be quite a bit of pace in this race, and so there should be no dawdling early fractions. You've got, the inside three fillies are going to probably want to go and get position, and there's a few others in here that like to lay close up. Classy Edition, Society. I mean, there's no excuse to move too soon here because they're going to be coming back to you. No one's stealing this race with a 24-148 or opening fraction. Mile and 16th also ensures a little quicker pace than if it would be mile and an eighth, mile and 3/16, mile and a quarter. Not that these fillies would run that far, but anyway, bottom line is Secret Oath will have pace to run at. Just wait to the quarter pole. She's got a massive kick. It just isn't very long. I mean, if you wait, especially with that long run in from the top of the stretch to the wire at Churchill. I mean, you can wait longer than you normally would and still have plenty of time to get up. So I'm looking for Secret Oath to and she's 3-1 in the morning line. To me, that's a gambling number if you can get it. I'm looking for Secret Oath to get back on the beam and repeat the type of race that she ran on this track last year when she won the Oaks.
Amore is a filly who's in fantastic form. I liked her when she went out to your backyard and won the Beholder last time. Now she comes back to Kentucky for Brad Cox. This filly wants to beat you. If she gets next to you, that's what made me so enthralled with her. The way she was so dogged in the Bayacoa Stakes to run down a loose leader, Lovely Ride that day, who was in just raging form for Robertino Diodoro. I said, if she does that again out here, she's going to run down Fun to Dream and the others in the Beholder Mile. Same thing. If she gets next to you, she's going to beat you. She really wants to win. So I think, like you're saying, that timed move from Secret Oath again, stay behind her and then come get her, because I think if you get eye to eye with Amore, and we see the way Secret Oath likes to idle sometimes when she gets in front of a horse, Amore is going to come back on. And I could see a situation where Secret Oath takes the lead and Amore digs back in, and then we have coin flip at the wire. This is the kind of race it could be if they don't wait till the last. I think if they wait with Secret Oath, that she'll go by. But this could be a really fun, and we get some of these stretch runs on Derby weekend at Churchill that just kind of like wrap us up. I'll never forget Amazombie and Shackelford in the Churchill Downs handicap back on the undercard when Orb won back in 2013. You get some of these just showdown races and horses just go at it for a quarter mile, and they're great horses. The track's fast, it's souped up, the crowd's energized, and you get these mega stretch runs. I think we could be in for one of those in the Churchill or in the La Troyenne. This is going to be a fun race.
Yeah, she could run. I mean, she's my exact partner with Wayne's filly Amore, because I saw her out here at California. I didn't think anybody could beat Fun to Dream, especially the trip that Fun to Dream got. And you're right, Amore came to her and she just said, no, you're not beating me. And if you look at her form, daughter of Uncle Mo, she's won her last 3, and her numbers continue to rise. She's outside, which means Laurent Giroux can kind of dictate his own trip. And with pace inside, she can sit 5, 6, 7 lengths off the pace and then make her move and maybe get the jump on Secret Oath. But I think those are the two. But I like Secret Oath to win it, but I respect Amore. I think she's getting to a point now where she's going to produce another forward move and maybe get to this level, if not in this race, then on Friday, then maybe maybe down the road. But she's good for sure.
It's a treat to get the Kentucky Oaks winner on the card right after the Kentucky Derby winner went earlier on the program. And the one thing we know, we're going to end up seeing 2 Kentucky Oaks winners on the card Friday, because a new one will be crowned in our final handicapping exercise. It is race number 11 of 13 on Friday at Churchill Downs, the Grade 1, $1.25 million Kentucky Oaks. They've been running this as long as the Kentucky Derby, dating back to the 1870s. The fillies for the lilies, as they call it. It used to be Louisville's Day at the Races was Kentucky Derby Day, Jeff, but now they make Tuesday Louisville's Day at the Races. The Derby went from a 1-day event to a 2-day event with the Oaks, and now it's Tuesday through Saturday. Right. Louisville's Day at the Races is now officially Tuesday. Oaks Day is just another monumental kind of day on the racing calendar. Really, I mean, in terms of attendance, second largest attended day of the year behind only the Kentucky Derby. And, handle-wise, you're up there in the Breeders' Cup stratosphere, top 4 or 5 day of the year in terms of handle on Oaks Day. So it has become a mega event. We've got a mega field of 14. Capacity lineup for this year's Kentucky Oaks. There was a point last week where Wonder Wheel, the 2-year-old champion, hadn't even gotten into the field for the Kentucky Oaks, Jeff. She was 15 First on the also eligible list because she hasn't put it together this year in the points races. You got the 2-year-old champion from last year, Wonder Whale, but she's going to be nowhere near favoritism. 12-1 in the morning line. The favorite's role is Wet Paint. And we talked about this filly a little bit earlier in context with the alumni that she faced at Oaklawn running back in the 8 Bells Stakes. This is a race, I think, in the Kentucky Oaks where there is plenty of pace. Wet Paint just kind of lets out a breath the last 3 furlongs, maybe not 2 furlongs of her races, and just swallows everybody up. I think she gets just a delightful setup here.
It really is, and she's holding her form. You know, she's only run 6 times. She's never been beaten on dirt. Did you know that? She got beat at Turfway in an all-weather race, and she got beat in the grass at Kentucky Downs. Other than that, she's perfect, and she can handle it off track. Now, I don't think it's going to rain tomorrow. The weatherman, of course, changing his mind. Looks like we'll be fine tomorrow. But at 1 1/8 with plenty of pace, or enough pace anyway, to set things up, there's no reason why Wet Paint won't continue her outstanding form. As you mentioned, she's trained well since that last race. Looks good in the morning. Looks like a real happy filly. And as a daughter of Blame, whatever she's doing now, she should do even better as she gets more mature, older, more experienced. They develop later. She looks really, really good. And she's 5-2 in the morning line. This is another situation where I don't think you have any chance in the world of getting 5-2. Maybe play her in the rolling exotics. You might get a closer to that price, I don't know, than you will in the tote for the win pool, the straight pool. She looks to me like she should be 6-5, and I don't see anything about her that is worrisome. I mean, right? Maybe a lack of tactical speed, but that hasn't stopped her yet. And again, at 1 1/8, I think Wet Paint's going to go out and really put on a show. I think Botanical is a pretty decent filly. I don't think she's quite up to Wet Paint, but she's done all of her good work, good racing on all weather. Pedigree suggests, and she's out of a Blame mare, by the way, as well. I don't think that the dirt will hurt her at all, and certainly the distance won't. And she's got more speed than Wet Paint, so I think she's probably a logical exacta partner. The other contender, South Lawn, looks like she's getting better. Not sure who she's beating, but I think Wet Paint and Botanical, to me, would be the 2, and Wet Paint maybe the 1 to win the race.
Yeah. We talked about this in our Tuesday podcast, but worth mentioning, neither Wet Paint or Botanicals run at Churchill Downs. But if you wanted a pedigree to run at Churchill Downs, they both got it. You got Wet Paint, who's by Blame, who won the 2010 Breeders' Cup Classic over Zenyatta in that memorable score at Churchill Downs, out of a Street Cry mare who won the Stephen Foster by 6 lengths and one of the best older horse performances at Churchill Downs in decades. And then Botanical's sire is no other than Medaglia d'Oro. You already mentioned he was the sire of Rachel Alexandra, who won this Oaks by 20-plus lengths. He also sired Plum Pretty, who won the Kentucky Oaks, and he was also the sire of Songbird, one of the great 3-year-old fillies of the last couple decades and a Hall of Famer. Of course, she didn't get to run in the Kentucky Oaks, talking Songbird. She would have been about 2-5 in that race, but she had a fever and missed the Kentucky Oaks that year. She didn't miss much else. So, I mean, Medaglia d'Oro, Blame, you've got the top sires to produce some horses at Churchill who would love it. Wet Paint, Botanical, to me, I agree totally. It's a Brad Cox 1-2 in there in the Kentucky Oaks this year, and it's a 1 for me. I just think he's single all around. Oaks Derby double. Look at that potential. Oaks to the horse you like in the Kentucky Derby, because I don't think the Cox Exacta is going to pay that much in the Oaks. You know, I think Botanical will be a clear second choice in the wagering. South Lawn's probably third choice in there. So you're looking at favorite over the second pick or favorite over the third pick. I don't think the Exactas are that interesting in terms of the Kentucky Oaks. So the Oaks Derby double becomes interesting because you get a lot of math working for you with 20 pari-mutuel interests into the Kentucky Derby bet. So if you like Wet Paint, you don't like 6-5, which I think might be the price. You don't like $12 Exactas, which might be the case, $14 Exacta. Then maybe look at the Oaks Derby double, and we'll give them some Derby horses to consider here a little bit later in the segment. But Oaks Derby double, Jeff, you know, even when you get 2 favorites, you're generally looking at somewhere in the $18 to $20 range for the Oaks Derby double when there's 2 pretty logical winners between the Oaks and the Derby. So if you get any kind of bingo in the Kentucky Derby, you can really blow that price up from there compared to what you're going to get in the win pool on Wet Paint.
Let me ask you a question, because I know you study this stuff. We're going to see the probables after the Oaks, you know, the double, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a pretty good indicator of what price these horses will be in the straight pool the following day, or does it vary?
Most days it would be like you're looking at your double probables from race
Right.
1 to race 2, etc. But in the Kentucky Derby, it's not, because the Oaks Derby double is hardcore players. It's not the casual fan. The Derby win pool is the most casual pool you're going to see all year. A horse with a tricky name like Pants on Fire, or a horse with Jack in his name, My Boy Jack. Right. Those horses are going to get bet by school teachers, uncles, aunts, bus drivers, whoever, because it's the Kentucky Derby. So not the same correlation that you're going to see. You're probably better off, like with that pool, it'll give you some semblance of where the sharps are looking. We always talk about the squares and the sharps when you talk about sports betting. The squares are the win pool for the Kentucky Derby, right? The sharps are going to be in more pools like this, the multi-day wagers, the multi-race wagers, pick 4s, pick 5s. So the horse who's like, second choice in the pick 4 ending in the Derby doesn't have any correspondence to being the second choice in the win pool. It just doesn't work that way. So you can't get over invested in that, but it'll give us, a little bit of sense of where the money might go in the exotics, and, who people might be singling tomorrow in the Derby, or, leaning more in multi-race wagers versus singling. So, but it's a great question. And this is like the one time I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't rely on the double pool to give me some sense of where the win pool is going to end up. This would be the exception to that rule. Let's take a little pause as we go to the schedule here and shuffle our papers around. We've got 2 sets of past performances from the 5th to the 6th now. So next up for Jeff and I, we are going to go to race number 4 on Saturday at Churchill Downs, and we've got another star returning here. You talk about it's a Breeders' Cup-like kind of convoy of horse flesh. Goodnight Olive is back. It's her second start of the year. She won the Filly and Mare Sprint last year at the Breeders' Cup, and she looked absolutely awesome at Keeneland in the return. She got a little bit of pressure late in the race, but for a comeback race, she was on her game.
Goodnight Olive has the lead. Mary, quite contrary, trying to chase her down with 1/8 of a mile to go, and Society is third back toward the inside. Goodnight Olive, just over a 16th to go. Mary, quite contrary, still trying, still 2 lengths away. The champ in front. Goodnight Olive chased all the way by Mary, quite contrary. Goodnight Olive to win the Grade 1 Madison for Iran Ortiz Jr. in a successful season's debut. 1 minute 23.12 seconds.
Not quite as spectacular as you might have expected, but the runner-up's a nice one. Mary, quite contrary from Gulfstream, had switched Barnes to Shug McGahee prior to that start, and she had thrown a lot of ones up on the resume as a strong closer down there in Florida. So that was a good rival, but Goodnight Olive did drift a little bit from the left-hand stick and kind of maybe was getting tired on the back end. 7/8 is a tough distance first time back. But she won, and she beat a very good field in the Madison. Does she come back and just beat this field in the Derby City Distaff with an improved effort, Jeff?
Yeah, I think I got the impression, and even before the race, that Goodnight Olive for that race, even though it was a Grade 1, wasn't 100% cranked up. It's a long year for her, and I think Chad left something to work with. She won on her class, but I don't think she was 100%. Now, the question is, will she build on that? I think she probably will. I think you're going to see a sharper filly or mare in this race than we saw in that race. And she'll 7/8 is a good distance for her because she don't want to really be rushed. She'd like to come out of there, kind of gather her momentum, and then build on that. Where if you were going 3/4, she would have to be used early. Well, they brought her back on 7/8, which is not an easy trip because you really have to be fit going 7/8. Now the question is, if Goodnight Olive is as good or going to be as good this year as she was last year, then she will step forward, and I expect her to do that. Again, no gamble here at 4 to 5 in the morning line. The one that I'm interested in is Monterey, the number 5 filly. I don't know whether she's quite up to beating Goodnight Olive. Numbers-wise, she's never run as fast as Goodnight Olive, but she's a 4-year-old filly now. She was terrific last year. Yep. And then, again, had a right to be a little bit short in her comeback in the mud at Oaklawn, going 3/4, and I mean, she ran well, but below which I think she's capable of doing. Now the question is the same thing with Goodnight Olive. Does she step forward? I think she will too. I think these are 2 really exceptional fillies, and I mean, they both better be at their game, or the other one's going to beat the other one, if you know what I mean. Right. So I think it boils down to those 2, and I got to go with Goodnight Olive. She's been consistently faster and better, but and she was older though last year. Now Monterey is turning 4. We should see her best. It's going to be a great race a terrific race, and first of many. I think these fillies will or mares will see of each other.
Matarea, of course, last year won the 8 Bells on this very card. So she's going to know the surroundings. She's been there, done that. It's a home game for her, obviously, running out of the stall there at Churchill. She's been based there since coming north from Fairgrounds at the end of the spring. As for Goodnight Olive, she was over at Keeneland, had the easy van ride over to Churchill. So she's been settled into Kentucky as well. She has not raced at Churchill Downs in the afternoon, Goodnight Olive, but she takes her game everywhere. She was good at Belmont, Aqueduct, Saratoga, Keeneland, run it up and down the line, have talent, will travel. And, they've got to beat Goodnight Olive in there, obviously. Looking forward to seeing her, one of my favorite horses in training. She is in the Derby City Distaff. That is race number 4. We're going to skip ahead to the 10th race on the card Saturday at Churchill Downs, Saturday's 10th race is the Churchill Downs Handicap. This is a sprint race for the males going 7 furlongs, much like the Derby City Distaff, 7 furlongs. This is the male counterpart to that race. Grade 1 company here and a purse of $750,000. Some familiar names, Florida Derby winner last year, White Barrio, who was in the Kentucky Derby. Didn't run so well that day, but he's back on Derby Day. Get her number. A horse has been in a lot of big races. Tejano Twist. Cody's Wish, the winner of last year's Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, certainly the headline act in terms of storylines. It'll be his first start of 2023, and the first start since we all had to pull the tissues out after last year's Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.
Up on their outside, and the 3 of them will turn for home together, and they're into the stretch. It's Cody's Wish and Cyberknife. Slow down Andy in between horses, down to the final 16. Cyberknife on the inside, Cody's Wish on the outside, down the center of Slow Down Andy. They're coming down to the finish. Here's the wire. Oh, the wish has come true. That one's for you, Cody. Cody's Wish has won the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile.
Oh my gosh. It's a story made for Hollywood. It was written right here in Lexington, Kentucky. I think all 3 of us are choked up on the desk here.
He may not look like it.
Get Jerry and Randy a tissue and a mint after being choked up on that. Reminds me of a great line from Billy Reed, the former turf writer in Kentucky and Sports Illustrated. William F. Reed, if you remember those from the glory days of Sports Illustrated. I remember when Shoemaker was training, right? After Bill Shoemaker's accident where he was paralyzed, he became a trainer after his riding career. And he had a horse named Diazzo in the Kentucky Derby. And the line Billy Reed told me, he said, if Diazzo wins this race, there won't be a dry eye in the house. And that's the deal. Everybody would have been rooting for Shug. Same way with Cody's Wish. This is a really good feel-good story, but also a really good horse, Jeff. And not to overplay the hand of his namesake and all of that. This horse can really run for Bill Mott. This is a tough spot to come back in on Derby Day off the long layoff. But where do you see him stacking up here in the Churchill Downs Handicap?
Well, he's much the best of this field. This is a field of some really nice horses facing a truly outstanding, maybe borderline great horse in Cody's Wish. He's won 7 out of 11, but he got beaten his first 3 starts. So that means he's only lost once since he broke his maiden. That was by a neck at Tampa Bay Downs, 2 turning of all places. His numbers are strong. His style is perfect. He's just an exceptional horse. And as a son of Curlin, his 5-year-old season really should be his best, and I expect it to be. Now, if you look at his work pattern, does not appear to be cranked up, but it's hard to tell because he's been training at Payson, not a fast track at all. Nobody works fast there. He's worked reasonably well. I haven't seen him work, but they've had this race on the radar for a while. I'm pretty sure that Mott's had him ready, and I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be running him if he thought he needed the race. This is not it's a $750,000 grade 1. Heck, why not be ready and win it, especially against this group? And the other thing about this race is it's weird because there's not a lot of speed in the race. And I think because of that, Cody's Wish might find himself a little closer to the pace than it would be if there was a lot of speed. And you might say, well, does it set up for him? I think it does because Cody Wish, he doesn't have a blinding late kick. He just kind of stays on really, really well. Right. And if he's 4 or 5 lengths behind you turning into the stretch, I think he's going to gobble you up, especially against this group. I expect him to win. He's 4 to 5 in the morning line. There's no big deal there. but I'd like to see him win because he's obviously a great story, but he's also an exceptional older horse. And we always say that our older horse division needs horses like Cody's Wish to draw interest. Yeah. And he will bring it if he wins here and then goes on and does some better things, which I'm quite confident that he will.
As much as we sourpuss how horses get out of training too fast and we don't get to see them enough, this card here is kind of a reminder like, hey, everybody, we're still here. You know, right. I mean, there are a lot of good horses that are still in training, and they all seem to have shown up on this particular card. A couple other notes about the Churchill Downs Handicap. Endorsed as a horse who won 4 races the first 31 of his career. Then he's won 3 in a row now at age 7. Mike Maker has found the fountain of youth with this horse somehow. He's in really good form coming off a win in the Hooper and the Gulfstream Mile down there. The 1-turn mile distance at Gulfstream should translate well here to the 7 furlongs out of the chute at Churchill. But I'm going to give you one here. I think we're going to get a price. Fortin Hill for Paulo Lobo. I love this horse's win at Keeneland last time because he had no business doing it. Knee Deep in Snow was lone speed in that race, and I was convinced Knee Deep in Snow could not lose. It was probably my best bet of the meet as far as conviction. I just didn't think the horse could possibly lose with that setup. And Fortin Hill ran by and drew off by 2. There was no help in that race at all, and he did it all on his own at 6.5. You talk about not much speed in this race, and there's some 2-turn types. This is a sprinter, and going 7/8, and he doesn't need any kind of help. I think Fortin Hill's coming off a really big race. They're not going to bet Paulo Lobo and Gerardo Corrales on Kentucky Derby Day. They're too off-Broadway, if you will, to get bet hard, with a casual crowd there. I think we're going to get a nice price, and I think Fortin Hill's going to run a really big race in the Churchill Downs Handicap. May not beat Cody's Wish, but that'd be a nice exacta. I think we're looking at double digits maybe on that runner underneath. So that's a look at the Churchill Downs Handicap. Next, we go to our Express Bet race of the week. It's race number 11, is it? No, 12. Yeah, the Derby's 12, the 11. Yeah, race 11 on the card. It's the Turf Classic. It's hard to keep everything in track here. My past performances are out of order. That's what got me. I flipped and I had race 12 up next. The Old Forester Bourbon Turf Classic. It's been named for every bourbon in Kentucky over the years. You might even remember it as the early times way back in the old days, Jeff. Star of Cosine, did you run in this race?
I don't think so. I can't remember. It's been 30 years. I know he won a lot of races for us. The one that I remember him was beating Lure at Atlantic City in UN. I remember that because we cost Lure $1 million bonus by beating him, And I always say we should have called up Suge and said, look, we'll let you win, but you got to give us $500,000, we'll split that and you can go ahead and win it. But they wouldn't have gone for it, and we beat him anyway. So he was a great horse, but I don't.
You might be in the slammer if you did that. You wouldn't even be here right now. You might be in the slammer if you did that, Jeff. I don't think that's legal.
I don't. Hey, if he can get away with it, it's legal, right? But
Turf Classic, though, we've got $1 million on the line here. It's our Express Bet race of the week. And before I get Jeff in trouble with the law, statute of limitations ran out on that theory.
We didn't do it, so it's okay. I just said I thought about it. I didn't say I did it.
Exactly.
I tell you, he won the Arlington Million though that year, so.
He got you your million then.
He did win that one, so that was good too. Anyway, I don't think we have anybody as good in here. I was kind of looking for maybe a couple of Euros to show up, but no, we've got the American contingent, Jeremy. So I'm thinking, looking at this group that seems to take turns beating each other. I was curious as to who the morning line favorite would be, and it turns out it's 7-2 on Phil D'Amato's Hong Kong Harry, who got beat last time out in the Kilroe Mile, going a mile at even money against horses that he really is better than and should have beaten. But he's trained really well since then. You can see him on the inside, outworking a Motorious, who's an exceptional sprinter. And although he doesn't change leads in here, he's on the rail with the blinkers up. He's holding sway. He's going to gallop out really, really well. He looks like a happy horse. I think he may have been a little rusty. I'm not sure how much Phil had him cranked up for the Kilroe in his first start since November, but he's ready now. And as you can see, this is an exceptional breeze that took place just a few days ago. I really think that Hong Kong Harry is going to make amends here. He won't be even money, which is fine with me. He's one of these horses that has got great tactical speed. He's a closer, but you can put him wherever you want him. And going a mile and 1/8 in this race that It figures to have a little bit of speed, but they're not going to go fast. I hope Hong Kong Harry and Pratt kind of draft in the second flight somewhere and then kick home as he did in that workout. And if I can get 7-2, then I'll take it.
You talk about this race not having a lot of pace, but you hope they go a decent clip along. If they get any kind of speed at all, Spooky Channel is going to at least say thank you. The 3 starts this year, they went 6 and 1, 16 and 2, 1 17 and 2, and 1 15 and 1. And the horse has 2 wins and a loss by a length. I picked Spooky Channel in this race because I figure it's got to go at least a little more favorable for him the first 6 furlongs in this race. I think he's running in really good form right now. He's a closer with Joel Rosario aboard. That's a perfect match in terms of horse and style. So I took Spooky Channel, who's run well this year. He's won 4 of his last 5 for trainer Jason Barkley. This is an 8-year-old. You're starting to get long in the tooth, be winning top level grade 1 races on the grass at age 8. I'm not saying he's John Henry or even John's Call maybe, but at age 8, he's as good as he has been, and that came after 14 months on the bench. So he held his form even with a year plus layoff in between. I went Spooky Channel in here. I think Hong Kong Harry's the other one. I think these 2 closers are going to have their say and be the horses to beat in here. Santine is the defending champion in this race. Turf course this year is not quite what we saw last year, especially when he won the Arlington Million over this turf course when it was just kind of painted dirt. And it was kind of that really weird turf course that they had during that limited August run for the one-day Arlington Million card. So I'm not so sure Santine is like this awesome horse for course compared to the grass they have now, because we really don't know how he's going to handle this different turf course as it's taken root a little bit more. I'll try to beat him in there. I don't think his form's that great, but I will say this. If we're picking against Brendan Walsh right now, we're kind of stupid. He won all 3 races he entered yesterday. He's coming off a Keeneland meet where he hit almost 30% at Keeneland. His horses were phenomenal at Keeneland. Brendan Walsh's horses are running big. So if you see that continue throughout an undercard on Friday or Saturday, and then Santin's sitting there at a decent price because he's off form a little bit right now, you are not, it's not against the rules to jump back in on him, because I think the way Walsh is going right now, this horse could wake up.
Okay. Fair enough.
Let's move our attention now to the Kentucky Derby, edition number 149, coming up 5:57, the post time for the Kentucky Derby. A look at the 20-horse field. There's also a 21, a 22, and a 23. First up will be Cyclone Mischief in 21. We say that because last year, nobody talked about Rich Strike until the wire of the Kentucky Derby. Nobody really even knew he was in the field. He wasn't on any of the graphics. We still don't have also eligibles on the graphics here. Now, we will know whether an also eligible gets into the field for the Kentucky Derby by 9 a.m. on Friday, scratch time for the Oaks Day card. So if you're not out of the field by 9 a.m., then there's just going to go with less than 20 horses at that point. The AEs will be declared out at that point on Friday morning. But that's how Rich Strike got in, right? Ethereal Road came out at the last minute. Rich Strike slipped into the field. I wrote 8,000 words for Countdown to the Crown, never mentioned the horse. So I made sure this year in my analysis, Jeff, I covered 21, 22, and 23 as an extra half a field practically. But nonetheless, you got to figure, that anything can happen in the Kentucky Derby. We're going to get our takes on this race in just a minute. But as we mentioned at the top of the podcast, and if you're just joining us now, Millie Ball, the wife of trainer Tim Yaktine, in our cohort with Santa Anita and the First Family of Tracks. She is on site in Louisville helping schooling horses in the paddock. We were going to do something earlier in the morning. She's like, can't do it now. I'm schooling horses in the paddock. So she's not just there, wearing fancy hats and drinking mid juleps. Millie's working with her husband there. And they've got the horses Reincarnate, and then they also have Practical Move, the Santa Anita Derby winner. She filed this report just this morning. So the latest news from Louisville from Millie and her thoughts on how the barn going right now. Got about a little 2-minute plus interview here with Millie. So let's grab that, cue it up. And as soon as I find it, where did I put it? Here we go. Here's Millie Ball from Louisville, Kentucky this morning.
Well, I'm here at Churchill Downs. It's Thursday morning. We finished training for the morning. Both Practical Move and Reincarnate went out. They galloped, trained well, and we took Practical Move to the gate. The Kentucky Derby gates are more narrow than the regular gates, so it's important the horse gets a feel. He's a very big individual, gets a feel of it being a little bit tighter in there, and that's what he's going to experience on Saturday. So far all is good. Looking at the horses that have caught my eye out here, Tappet Trice is trained really well. He comes across to me as a real grinder. He's a horse that's going to come from off the pace, so he's going to need the luckiest of trips. But the further he goes, in my opinion, the better he goes. He's schooled really well too. So if you're a Tappet Trice fan, I think he's going to run a big race. Reincarnate, of course, I think at 50-1 is getting overlooked. He is doing extremely well. He's really settled in well here to Churchill Downs. He's got speed, and I think that's one of the most important assets for horses going into the Kentucky Derby, to have that tactical speed to get good position early. Our other horse, Practical Move, is trained well. He's another horse that has good tactical speed. He drew extremely well, so I'm excited about that. In fact, I think post position number 10 has been the most productive gate, or at least one of them, for coming out and winning the Kentucky Derby. Another horse that caught my eye, who's been training well here, is a chestnut by the name of Disarm. Boy, he's a big, strong, powerful looking colt for Steve Asmussen. He's very runner typey, and he is 30-1 on the morning line. Of anyone else, I think, that I've seen, Verifying actually dropped the rider this morning, so caused a little bit of excitement or drama here, but was caught relatively quickly and seemed no worse for the wear. One other horse I think that's very interesting is Angel of Empire. He's a horse that's just getting really good right now, and he'll have Flavian Trout aboard. That's my take so far on who's doing good out here and how our horses are training. Wishing you the very best of luck and all the contenders for this Kentucky Derby.
Okay, as we played that clip and we record our podcast, we have some breaking news, Jeff, and I don't know if you're aware of this because we're in the middle. I just got alerted by text. Millie has said Practical Move has been scratched from the Kentucky Derby now. Came out of his morning exercise with an elevated temperature. I'll read the text from her. Practical Move has an elevated temperature, and we have to scratch. It's in his best interest. It's terrible timing, but that's horse racing. Not sure if you posted the video or not, but want to let you know that this just developed. As we have shown this video here, I want to update our listeners. Again, this is the news and the way that the Kentucky Derby works and the way the horse racing industry works. Sharp today, sour tomorrow. It can happen. We're doing this live to tape right now, and it's going to broadcast within, a couple minutes of us finishing the taping for the podcast. So updated news there. Certainly a major disappointment for Practical Move. I know the Santa Anita Derby winner was a horse you were very high on. Certainly I was as well. A horse that we thought was, almost assured of a top 5 placing, that he was one of the 5 best horses in this crop, whether you liked him on the win end or not. So that news officially from Millie Ball, the wife of trainer Tim Yakteen. I'm sure it's breaking in the racing press too, as we record, and we'll be rebroadcasting our podcast here. So Practical Move out. We just jokingly mentioned, unfortunately, about the also eligible situation. That would mean Cyclone Mischief can move into the field, would be number 21 Saddle Towel, but break from post number 20, like we saw with Rich Strike last year. So Practical Move out. Jeff, I know, I'm assuming you're hearing this for the first time.
Yes, I am. And it's just, this game just there's no mercy. I feel so badly for the connections. It happens like every year where this doesn't happen last Sunday or 10 days ago. It always happens like a day or two before the Derby. It's not even an injury. It's a temperature. It's a sickness. And according to what Millie is telling us, and a horse that if you had any connection with that horse, whether the trainer, the owner, the trainer's wife, anybody who's had anything to do with this colt had to feel reasonably hopeful and optimistic that he would run very, very well and maybe even win the Derby. And now that there's only one Derby, and that'll never happen for this colt. So, it's gut wrenching. And we talked about that quote unquote phone call that you get in the morning of a race. It happened to me, not with the Derby, but in 1989, we had Political Ambition ready to and win, we believe, the Breeders' Cup mile, and we got that phone call that morning from Neil Drysdale. We can't run. The horses got heat in an ankle, and to this day, I think we ended up winning a Breeders' Cup that day with prize, but we could have won too. And I'll never forget that because it just kills you, and I can't even feel for what they're going through right now. But as you mentioned, that alters the handicapping process a little bit now because he was one of my major horses, and now without him in there, I'm gonna look elsewhere. But that's a tough blow. That is just, I mean, like I say, you're hitting me with this news, and I hadn't heard it until now, so I just feel awful for friends of mine and good people, and that's just the way this game plays it.
Just amazing on the timing. We were literally running that clip, and I checked my phone messages while the clip was playing, and there's the text, and so, you're hearing, we're reacting to it in real time. By the time you see this podcast, like a half hour from now, you'll probably be like, I had seen that, but like literally while we're trying to talk about this horse, this set of horses, Millie's live report is when the news breaks to us that this happens. So practical move out. Let's talk the application of the fallout from that, The 21 gets into the race, Cyclone Mischief, a horse who has some early speed. Dale Romans loves to be in the Kentucky Derby. He had Shackelford on the lead back here in 2021, I believe it was. And I even mentioned this in a blog I wrote a couple of weeks ago. It might have been in Countdown to the Crown or one of the pieces I wrote for First Better Express. But the slowest pace in the Kentucky Derby over the last decade or so was when Shackelford went to the front and slowed the pace down. There's not a lot of speed in this year's Kentucky Derby from the far outside post, and a guy who went to the lead, and Shackelford took him to the lead into the stretch and ended up fading a little bit and then came back and won the Preakness. Knowing those tactics and how Shackelford did and the post that you got to overcome, Cyclone Mischief may be the horse who ends up on the lead in this year's Kentucky Derby. That's not out of the question.
It isn't if they want to be, because I think you're right about Dale being committed to sending this horse out of there. It's not impossible to win from the 20, and you can certainly see this horse from the outside loading last and then popping and going. He may impact the pace, and if the pace is impacted, then the race could be impacted. I mean, we saw it last year, with an improbable winner winning from way back due to the fact of an incredibly unusually fast early pace, which promoted his chances. Maybe we see the same thing with Cyclone Mischief. Now, if you look at his form, he's a front runner. He's not blazingly fast, but he likes to lay close up. In fact, in the 7 races that he's run in, Cyclone Mischief, he's only been in front once, and that was in the Fountain of Youth, and he went the first quarter in 24 flat. So it's not like he's some kind of fast sprinter in the race. But if they want him, if they gun him out of there and for no other reason than just to be in front and say you were in front in the Derby, then maybe he will impact it. What impacts this race, though, it removes, to me, a legitimate contender in the race. It's one less horse and somebody who thinks he has a good chance to win doesn't have to worry about, now that with practical move out. So I don't know. I mean, I think one of the reasons why I like Dermot Sitagaki, and I'm going to stick with him even though the race shape may change, is because I didn't think he had anybody outside him that would bother him, which would allow him to kind of cruise up out there, sit, and go. But if he's going to be hooked up from a horse outside of him, that might impact his strategy and his effectiveness. So this changes a little bit. But in handicapping this race, I mean, I still think some of the horses that I really like that will run well are going to run well. And that brings me, if not to Dermot Sotogaki, who I still like, it brings me to Skinner. And because now a faster pace, if there is something like that happens because of the also drawing in, it's not going to hurt him. We know that. I've heard reports that he looks great. He's by my favorite stallion in Curlin. He's going to get better with age. We have not seen him his best yet, and his numbers are fit. I just think a 20-1 Skinner is a gamble for me now. I mean, I'm still going to use Dermot Sotogaki, but the thing about this race, you can bet more than one horse to win, or key more than one, because as long as you're taking big prices, and that's what I'm trying to do here. So the gap between Dermot Sotogaki and Skinner and my handicap closes a little bit here for sure. Tapit Trice might help him a little bit. Now I'll just have to find a fourth horse. And I mentioned yesterday some of the horses. Two Phils is starting to grow on me a little bit. I didn't mention, but his win in the at Turfway was so good. If it wasn't just the all weather, then he's got the fastest number in the race, so you can always fall back on that. But if he is a colt that can do what he did on the all weather on dirt, at 12, 15 to 1, I could use him. So I'm still a little bit over the map because I'm still a little bit in shock about a horse that I thought was going to be right there. But the gist of what I have talked about, I think, remains pretty close.
If there's any indication on popularity and searches and things like that, Eddie Olczyk and I put together 10 handicapping videos on the contenders for the Kentucky Derby. The Two Phils videos are getting by far the most views. People are searching for Two Phils, which we talked about that, My Boy Jack, that kind of deal like that, where those horses kind of get bet in the Kentucky Derby that have popular names. Two Phils is kind of really popular on YouTube right now for whatever reason. And maybe there's some sentiment there that he's going to get bet, a little predictive nature that he's going to be popular amongst the general public. Maybe he'll be a price that's a little bit shorter than what we anticipate. Those are the kind of things that we're at right now in the Kentucky Derby. Adjustments and following the board, right? That's where we are when we talk Thursday afternoon for Saturday's race. We've looked at these horses for 6 months, some of them 8-10 months, going back to their 2-year-old year. We've watched all the replays. We've seen the training. Now you're in a situation where you're looking up at the sky at the weather, that kind of thing like that. You're looking at the tote board and you're trying to find the value, and you're staying limber for anything that develops and changes, whether the track's playing a particular way or a news element like this where we lose Practical Move out of the field. So this is why you do your work ahead of time, and we study and we do all these different shows and we discuss it throughout the weeks and Derby week after the entries come out, so that we can be adaptive when things like this happen. So Jeff's got to look for some different options. I've got to look at some different options in terms of my exotics. With Practical Move was, key in my plays underneath as well. So, we have to make these adjustments. That's what it's all about. What will the impact be with the horse drawing into the race? Will he have an impact cycle and mischief? Do we have any more defections to come between now and Friday morning? That's what we're going to find out. But what we know now is a field of 20 for the Kentucky Derby. Does not include Practical Move. It does include Cyclone Mischief drawing into the race. I think Joel Rosario was listed on a double call there. He's not going to ride Cyclone Mischief, I wouldn't think so. Dale Romans, I'm sure there'll be a news element later today. We'll probably name another rider, or maybe they'll wait until tomorrow morning at entry or at scratch time to name another rider. See if somebody comes open. Remember, John Velasquez came open on Animal Kingdom because Uncle Mo, Robbie Alvarado, got hurt in a post parade. And then Robbie Alvarado got his face busted up in a post parade incident where a horse bucked up and hit him. They replaced him with John Velasquez. He came open because Uncle Mo had scratched. Right. And so John Velasquez won the Kentucky Derby on Animal Kingdom and wasn't supposed to ride the horse unless crazy circumstances happen. So we don't know how the rider situation in that merry-go-round will sort out. But Joel Rosario was the named rider on Cyclone Mischief, but he's already committed in the field. So I can't imagine that he will be the pilot, but let's see what happens with the news there. What a crazy situation morning as live news breaks during the course of our podcast. But let's wrap it up here for now, Jeff. We're just short of an hour mark here on the First Call podcast. We will wish everybody the best of luck. We'd love you to play with ExpressBet and First Bet this weekend. We've got a $10 money back special. When you bet any race Friday or Saturday from Churchill Downs, not just the big stakes races, every race on the card, all 13 on Friday, 14 on Saturday, the complete cards. Money back special means if your win bet finishes second or third, you'll get up to $10 of that bet back. So if you bet $8, you'll get $8 back. If your win bet finishes second or third, up to $10. If you bet $100, you'll get $10 of it back. So great incentive to play with ExpressBet and First Bet during the course of the weekend. Also want to remind you, if you're a handicapping tournament player, on Friday, there's a $300 qualifying tournament for the Kentucky Derby Day Challenge. So you can get into that big money contest by playing and succeeding in the $300 feeder tournament on Friday, because Saturday's Kentucky Derby Challenge is a high roller $3,000 handicapping tournament. Good luck to those people playing at expressbet.com. Tournaments only at expressbet.com. $3,000 Kentucky Derby Day Challenge. But if you want to try to get in for $300, you can play in that tournament on a Friday and match your wits against other top horse players around the country. We know we've got a lot of people watching this podcast that don't normally watch our podcast during the year because it's the Kentucky Derby, man. This is like the Halley's Comet. It comes around every once in a while, and
Right.
everybody looks up to see it. So we appreciate new folks tuning in. Jeff and I do this podcast every Friday, first call, that previews weekend stakes races. So if you have a little success on the Kentucky Derby, you catch the bug for betting the horses, come back again and check us out next week. And on Tuesday every week, we have a podcast called It's Official, where we review the hot topics of the past weekend. And Jeff, I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about from this year's Kentucky Derby and Oaks Day.
Yeah, I sure hope that Practical Move is able to rebound quickly, maybe possibly make the Preakness, or maybe not. I don't know. But the bottom line is we lost one of the major players, but it's still the Derby. There's still 20 horses, and there's still about 9 of them I think that could win. So it's feel bad for the connections, but we'll push on and try to maybe send in an adjustment on the wagering guide, because Practical Move was prominent in my analysis, and now it's a little bit on the obsolete side. So I'll have to refigure that and hopefully get it up, and we can have a new strategy for Saturday.
All right, be sure to check out the first Kentucky Derby wager guide. All of that information Jeff's talking about, all bundled up into one nice place. Contender profiles on all 23 horses who were entered for the Derby. So if you want to brush up on Cyclone Mischief, you haven't been looking up on him, his bio and preview is also on that wager guide. So go to first.com/guide, 1st.com/guide. So first.com/guide to check out the wager guide. On behalf of everybody with First and ExpressBet, my partner Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plug. Thanks to Millie Ball for her report from Louisville on a tough day for that barn. We will talk to you on Tuesday, everybody. Enjoy Kentucky Derby 149.